Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling, well, a really dark chapter in American crime. We're going deep on John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown.
It's a deeply disturbing story. We're looking at Gacy's campaign of terror, really, responsible for sexually assaulting and murdering at least 33 teenage boys and young men in Cook County, Illinois. This was between, 1972 and 1978.
Yeah, and when you dig into the sources, the thing that just hits you again and again is the sheer duality of it all. It's almost sickening.
Absolutely. On one hand, you've got this upstanding citizen image. He was a successful businessman involved in local politics as a Democratic precinct captain.
And of course, the unforgettable Pogo the Clown, performing at kids' parties, hospitals, community events, just this image of harmless fun.
But then the flip side, that ordinary-looking house he owned, 8213 West Summerdale Avenue. It was literally a mass grave.
It's hard to even process.
They
eventually pulled nearly 30 bodies out of a crawl space under his house. It was barely 3.5 feet high.
Exactly. So our mission here is to try and understand how he kept that mask on for so long, how this horrifying reality existed right under everyone's noses, and, frankly, how the system failed to catch it sooner.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. To get a handle on the killer, we really need to look at the background, the early life, the trauma that kind of shaped him.
Right. Gacy was born March 17, 1942, right here in Chicago. And the sources are pretty clear. His childhood was far from idyllic. It was really defined by abuse from his father, John Stanley Gacy.
Alcoholic, a World War I vet.
Yeah, and the abuse wasn't just occasional, it was relentless. Physical beatings for John and his sisters, often with a razor strap, the sources say.
But it sounds like the psychological stuff was just as brutal, maybe even more damaging in the long run. The constant belittling.
Oh, completely. His father called him stupid, constantly compared him unfavorably to his sisters, just chipped away at his self-worth.
And as he got older, the abuse took a specific, really cruel turn, didn't it? Targeting his identity, his masculinity.
Yes, especially as he hit adolescence. His mother tried to shield him sometimes, which just seemed to make the father angrier. He'd call him mama's boy, sissy. And then there's that really chilling line the father apparently used, predicting he would become queer.
Wow. Hearing that from your own father, I mean, you can see how that would create some deep psychological wounds, especially for a kid grappling with his own identity.
It absolutely plants seeds of intense conflict. He's dealing with his own emerging sexuality, whatever that was, and his father's words are just weaponizing it, turning it into something shameful and wrong.
So does that feed into his later actions? That need for control, the choice of victims?
You can definitely draw a line, I think. The sources suggest it created this desperate need for external approval, this drive to be seen as successful, masculine, powerful, which we see later in his business and civic life.
But underneath, there's this intense self-loathing.
Exactly, and a hatred perhaps projected onto others. He preyed on young men, often vulnerable ones, sometimes those who maybe presented in ways his father would have condemned. It's like he was acting out his own internalized shame.
And it wasn't just the father's abuse. He was also a victim himself, right, of sexual violence.
Yes, that's another layer. Molested by a family friend, a contractor apparently, and also by a teenage girl, a friend of his mother's daughter when he was quite young. 6 to 10, the sources suggest.
And he kept that hidden.
Kept it completely hidden, likely out of fear of his father's reaction. So that pattern of secrecy, of shame, it started really early.
You also mentioned physical struggles adding to his feeling like an outsider.
Right. He was overweight as a kid, apparently quite uncoordinated, and he had a congenital heart condition.
Which kept him out of sports, things like that.
Yeah, and led to hospital stays during his teens. He even had seizures and blackouts.
And the father's reaction was predictable, sadly.
Zero empathy. Accused him of faking it for attention. Just constant invalidation, neglect, alongside the outright abuse. It's a really toxic foundation.
It's amazing he functioned at all, let alone built this facade of success later on.
Well, that's the thing. He seemed to develop this knack for manipulating perceptions early on. He didn't actually finish high school, but he talked his way into Northwestern Business College. Did well there.
Then he gets married in '64 to Marlon Myers. And this seems to be the start of his first real attempt at a normal, successful life.
It really was. Her father helped him out big time, bought him 3 KFC franchises in Waterloo, Iowa. Gacy managed them. He apparently called this period perfect.
And he threw himself into community life there. The Jaycees.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
The Junior Chamber of Commerce. This was his path to the respectability he seemed to crave. He became Mr. Community Leader.
Got the nickname Colonel.
Yeah, apparently for bringing free chicken to meetings. He even won an Outstanding Vice President Award in 1967. He was really making a name for himself.
And this finally got him what he always wanted from his father.
It seems so. His father visited him in Iowa and, according to Gacy, told him, "Son, I was wrong about you." That must have been a huge moment for him. Validation at last.
So on the surface, he's got it made. Respected, successful businessman, father's approval, thinking about local politics maybe.
Right. Considering running for alderman or even mayor, the perfect camouflage was in place.
But underneath, it was already starting to crack in Iowa, wasn't it?
Yes. The predation began there, around 1968. He started targeting young men, often connected to the Jaycees, guys who were maybe new in town or having money troubles. Vulnerable targets.
And his method wasn't brute force initially, more manipulation.
Exactly. Plying them with alcohol, offering a bit of cash for these so-called scientific experiments. It was coercive.
And this led to the assault on Donald Voorhees, the 15-year-old.
Yes, the son of another Jaycees member. That was the case that brought him down in Iowa.
And even then, he tried to cover it up, manipulate the situation.
Oh, absolutely. It's a real preview of his later behavior. He didn't just deny it. He actively tried to silence the victim and witnesses. He tried to pay another employee, Russell Schroeder, to rough up Voorhees, scare him off testifying.
So calculated even then, not impulsive.
Definitely calculated, but it didn't work. He was convicted of what they called sex perversion back then against Voorhees. Got sentenced to 10 years.
But crucially, he didn't serve anywhere near that.
No. Just 18 months. He was paroled in June 1970. The conviction cost him that life, though. His wife had divorced him, got custody of their kids.
So he comes back to Chicago, stripped of that Iowa success story. What's the next move?
He needed to rebuild the facade. And this time, it seems, build it even stronger, maybe more calculatedly. His mother helped him financially, and in 1971, he buys the house. 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in Norwood Park. The house.
And almost immediately starts the business, PDM contractors.
Within a year, yeah. PDM, painting, decorating, maintenance.
And this wasn't just a legitimate business, was it? It became something else.
It became the perfect tool for him. He needed workers, right? So he targeted young men, teenagers, high schoolers, often kids who needed money, maybe runaways, kids whose families weren't keeping close tabs.
Easy to hire, easy to control, maybe easy to make disappear.
That seems to have been the logic. And the business was successful. By 78, it was apparently pulling in $200,000 a year. That gave him money, legitimacy.
And a constant, plausible reason for young men to be coming and going from his house at all hours.
Precisely. If anyone noticed, well, they were just employees. He had the perfect cover story.
And he layered on more respectability, too, back into politics.
Yep. Democratic precinct captain, gives you local connections, visibility. He even directed the Polish Constitution Day parade for several years, from 75 to 78. Big deal in Chicago.
Which leads to that infamous photo.
The one with First Lady Rosalind Carter in May 1978. He was so deeply embedded in the local political scene, seemed so respectable, that he got Secret Service clearance to be near her. You can imagine the shockwaves later when the truth came out.
Unbelievable. But the ultimate mask, the one everyone remembers, was Pogo.
Pogo the Clown. He joined a clown club, the Jolly Jokers, around 1975. Developed persona, sometimes Pogo, sometimes Patches.
Performing at children's parties, charity events.
Exactly. Hospitals, community picnics, the image of pure innocence.
But looking back at photos of his clown makeup, it's actually kind of unsettling, isn't it? Not your typical happy clown.
It wasn't, no. The makeup had these sharp, pointed edges around the mouth, almost harsh-looking, not round and cheerful.
And the power of that disguise.
It's immense. Who suspects the friendly clown? It grants immediate trust, access. Gacy himself nailed it later. He told detectives something like, "Clowns can get away with murder."
Chilling. It perfectly sums up how he saw it, the mask as immunity.
So by the mid-70s, he has it all in place. The respectable business, the political connections, the beloved clown persona. And the house on Summerdale is his domain. His second marriage had ended by 76.
All right, he apparently told his wife he was bisexual and was bringing boys into the garage. So once she was gone, he had the house completely to himself.
And that's when the murders really seem to escalate. The reign of terror truly begins.
Let's talk about the first known murder after he moved back to Chicago. Timothy McCoy.
January 1972. McCoy was only 16. Gacy apparently picked him up at the Greyhound station, offered him a place to stay, maybe help him get to Omaha, lured him back to the house.
Assaulted him, and then the next morning, A struggle.
Yes. And Gacy's story about this kill is really revealing. Initially, he claimed self-defense, said McCoy came at him with a knife.
But he changed that story later.
Years later, during his confession, he admitted he realized McCoy hadn't been attacking him. He'd just gone to the kitchen to make breakfast, had the knife for that. It was incidental.
So the self-defense claim was a lie. But what he said he felt during the killing, that's the truly disturbing part.
Yeah, right. He confessed that after he stabbed McCoy, he felt this intense exhaustion followed by sexual climax. And he had this terrifying realization. That's when I realized that death was the ultimate thrill.
That's the moment, isn't it? The psychological switch flips. Violence itself becomes the goal.
It seems so. The compulsion is born. And McCoy becomes the first victim buried in the house itself, under the bedroom floor, sealed with concrete.
Setting the pattern. The house is the crime scene. The house is the grave.
Exactly. And the victims that followed were mostly young men, teenagers, ages 14 to 21 roughly. Many were runaways or identified as gay or bisexual.
Which made them easier targets, less likely to be missed immediately.
Tragically, yes. Easier to lure, and sometimes their disappearances weren't reported right away or weren't taken as seriously by authorities at the time.
And his methods became more refined, more controlled over those 6 years.
The core remained pretty consistent. Sexual assault, then strangulation or asphyxiation. But he developed these signature techniques. The rope trick is probably the most infamous.
Well, that's where he'd use handcuffs.
Yeah, often under the guise of showing them a magic trick. Let me show you how Houdini escaped. That kind of thing. Once the cuffs were on, they were trapped.
And if they fought back or screamed?
He became ruthless about silence. The accounts are gruesome. He'd stuff cloth, rags, sometimes even the victim's own underwear, deep into their mouths.
To suffocate them.
To suffocate them, yes. And also, horrifyingly, to prevent noise and mess. He apparently learned that lesson after his second murder victim in '74 left stains on the carpet. He wanted cleaner, quieter kills. It speaks volumes about his detachment, his focus on, operational details.
Just grim. The bodies started accumulating under the house.
Let's talk about John Butkovich. His case feels like a major missed red flag.
It really does. Butkovich was 17, worked for PDM. Gacy killed him in July 1975. The reason? Apparently, Butkovich was pushing Gacy for wages he was owed.
So mundane motive, horrific outcome.
Gacy lured him over, got him drunk, handcuffed him, strangled him. But Butkovich was the first one buried in the garage, not the main crawl space.
And his parents didn't just let it go? No, they were persistent. They knew something was wrong. They called the police constantly, over 100 times apparently, pushing them to investigate Gacy. They suspected him.
But the police
basically didn't act on it effectively.
Yeah.
Their pleas fell on deaf ears at the time. It's a really stark example of the system failing.
But Kokovich wasn't the only time Gacy almost got caught, was he? There were survivors, people who escaped and reported him.
It's staggering, actually, the number of near misses, the times law enforcement had him in their sights and just let him go.
Robert Donnelly, 1977. Tell us about that.
Donnelly was 19, a college student. Gacy abducted him from a bus stop, took him home, assaulted him, tortured him. Really brutal stuff, fake executions, repeatedly holding his head underwater in the bathtub until he passed out.
My God. Donnelly actually begged him to kill him.
Apparently so. The torture was that bad. But for some reason, Gacy let him go.
And Donnelly went straight to the police.
Immediately. Gave them Gacy's name, address, details of the assault. A solid report.
So what happened? How did Gacy talk his way out of that?
This is where you see Gacy's manipulative skill and maybe the biases of the time. When the police questioned Gacy, he spun this incredible story.
What did he say?
He claimed it was all consensual, a kinky sex slavery role-play scenario, and that Donnelly just couldn't handle it and panicked.
And the police bought that. From a prominent local businessman versus a traumatized young man.
It seems they did, or at least found it easier to accept than the alternative. You have to remember the context of the 70s, the attitudes towards sexual assault, especially involving men. Gacy walked away clean.
And killed again soon after.
Just a month later, the consequences of that failure were immediate and deadly.
Then there's Jeff Rignall, also 77.
Similar pattern. Lured with drugs, knocked out with chloroform, handcuffed, assaulted. Rignall didn't get criminal charges to stick effectively, but he did pursue a civil case.
Right, he sued Gacy for battery and got a settlement.
Yeah, $3,000, but again, the criminal side faltered. And later that same year, Gacy was actually arrested after another 19-year-old accused him of kidnapping him at gunpoint and forcing sexual acts.
He admitted the acts, but claimed consent again.
Yep. And the charges got dropped because the victim didn't show up for court. So Gacy's record stayed clean, his parole status wasn't revoked. Any one of these incidents, properly investigated, should have sent him back to prison.
It's just failure after failure. It allowed him to feel completely untouchable.
Absolutely. Which meant he kept killing, but eventually he hit a very practical problem.
Running out of room.
Running out of room in the crawl space.
And this is where PDM contractors comes back into play. Not just for victims, but for disposal.
Right. He needed to dig more graves under the house, but he needed a reason for the digging.
So he used his own employees.
Yes. Forced some of his young, vulnerable PDM workers, including Gregory Godzik, who tragically ended up buried there himself, to dig trenches in that cramped crawl space.
What excuse did he give them?
Just told them it was drainage work. Said there were plumbing problems, foundation issues that needed fixing, gruesome, back-breaking work in horrific conditions, framed as a normal job.
By late 78, how many bodies were down there?
Eventually, 26 were recovered just from the crawl space itself. It was packed. Remember, it's only about 42 inches high. You'd have to crawl on your hands and knees.
And the smell.
It
It must have become overwhelming.
It did. That became a huge issue. He tried to manage it initially, used lime, poured concrete over some graves, standard decomposition management, basically.
But with that many bodies.
It wasn't enough, especially as the pace picked up in 77, 78. The sheer volume of decaying matter, the poor ventilation, the smell of death started seeping through the floorboards. Sometimes the gases would literally shift the concrete slabs he'd laid.
So the house itself was starting to betray his secret.
In a way, yes. And when that crawl space was physically full, probably sometime in late 1978, he had to change tactics again.
No more burials at home.
No more room. So he switched to river disposal. The last 5 victims, he dumped their bodies into the Des Plaines River from an I-55 bridge south of the city.
That change in method, from careful burial to hasty dumping, that became important later, didn't it?
Very important for the prosecution at trial. It showed he was still thinking, planning, adapting to problems, trying to avoid getting caught, not acting randomly or uncontrollably.
Okay, so the house is full, the smell is getting bad, he's dumping bodies in the river. The end is clearly approaching. But it wasn't the smell or the near misses that finally broke the case.
No. It came down to one missing boy, Robert Piest, and one persistent detective.
December 11th, 1978. Tell us about Piest.
Robert Piest was 15, a good kid, sophomore honor student. He worked part-time at Nissan Pharmacy in Des Plaines. Gacy had recently done some remodeling work there.
And Gacy approached him at the pharmacy.
Yes, offered him a summer construction job, better pay, $5 an hour, which was good money then, nearly double what the pharmacy paid. Piest told his mom he was just going to talk to the guy quickly after his shift.
But he never came home.
Never came home. His mother, Elizabeth, was waiting to pick him up. It was actually her birthday. She knew immediately something was wrong. Robert was reliable. He wouldn't just disappear.
She reported him missing right away.
Yes. And crucially, Lieutenant Joe Kozenzak at the Des Plaines Police Department didn't just dismiss it as a teenage runaway. His own son knew Piest. He took it seriously from the start.
And Gacy was the immediate focus.
Kozenzak zeroed in on Gacy as the last person known to have seen Piest. He was suspicious about that job offer story right away. He asked Gacy to come down to the station for questioning late on December 12th.
Gacy agreed, but then stalled.
Yeah, he called Kozenzak back, asked if he still needed him, said he'd be right there. But he didn't show up immediately.
And we know now what he was doing during that delay.
Exactly. While Kozenzak waited, Gacy was driving Piest's body, which he'd apparently hidden temporarily in his attic, down to the Des Plaines River and dumping it, literally disposing of the primary evidence while the lead investigator was waiting to question him.
Unbelievable nerve. He finally shows up hours later.
Around 3:20 a.m. on December 13th, and his pants and shoes are covered in mud.
His explanation.
Claimed his car slid into a ditch near the river. A desperate, flimsy excuse. And he completely denied offering Piest a job or having any significant contact with him.
That denial was his fatal mistake.
It really was, because the police already had enough to get a search warrant for his house that same day.
What did they find in that first search?
A lot of suspicious stuff. Police badges, handcuffs, guns, needles, pornographic films, all definite red flags. But the absolute clincher, the thing that proved Gacy was lying about contact with Piest, was a receipt.
Just a simple photo developing receipt?
Yeah. It belonged to one of Piest's friends. Gacy had apparently taken the film, promising to develop it for him. Finding that receipt in Gacy's house directly contradicted his claim of having no contact. It proved he lied.
That must have ramped everything up. Surveillance started.
Full-on surveillance. And they started digging into his past, quickly uncovering the Iowa sodomy conviction. More searches of the house turned up more links.
Like the high school ring?
Right. A class ring belonging to John Syke, a young man missing for 2 years. They also found one of Gacy's employees driving Syke's car. The employee said Gacy sold it to him cheap.
And then the dogs came in.
Trained police dogs. They indicated the presence of human decomposition inside Gacy's car, even after he tried to clean it. The physical evidence, the scent, was building.
And then Gacy makes this incredibly bold or maybe desperate move, inviting the police over.
Yeah, December 19th, he invited 2 plainclothes officers who were tailing him into his house for breakfast, probably trying to act casual, like he had nothing to hide.
Big mistake.
Huge mistake. Both officers were hit by this overwhelming smell of decay inside the house. He was trying to cover it with air fresheners, but it was unmistakable.
So even as his lawyers are fighting back, filing suits against the police, the smell is telling the real story.
The smell was the point of no return, really. Then, on December 21st, while under surveillance, they see him pass a small bag of marijuana to a gas station attendant.
Not the crime of the century, but enough.
Enough for an arrest? It gave them the legal grounds to hold him while they got the final comprehensive search warrant, the one that would let them start digging.
And once he's in custody, knowing they have the warrant, knowing about the smell, the receipt, the ring, he finally breaks.
He breaks. Faced with the overwhelming evidence and the imminent excavation of his property, he confesses. It was apparently a long, rambling statement over several hours.
Admitted to how many?
Initially said 30, but eventually clarified it was 33 victims. He gave details, locations of bodies, but he often tried to distance himself, didn't he? Claiming it wasn't really him.
Right. He started talking about an alter ego, Jack, or sometimes John, who supposedly committed the murders and the sex acts. This Jack persona became central to his later insanity defense.
Where did he lead them first?
To the garage. Pointed out the spot where John Butkovich was buried, but the real horror was yet to come.
The crawl space.
Finding that trap door, opening it up, that's when the true scale became apparent. They initially saw parts of at least 3 bodies wrapped in plastic, and the excavation began. Right through Christmas.
An absolutely horrific task for those investigators. Imagine crawling into that tiny, foul-smelling space, just 42 inches high, having to carefully dig through soil mixed with lime and human remains.
Lying on their stomachs, using small tools.
Yeah, painstakingly uncovering body after body. The psychological toll must have been immense. They had to pump air in constantly because the stench of decomposition was so overpowering.
And they started finding identifying items.
Wallets, ID cards, confirming identities like John Syke, Gregory Godzik, the employee. Gacy had forced to help dig his own grave, essentially.
Money finally came from the property itself.
29 in total. 26 from the crawl space, Butkovich from the garage, and then 2 more buried outside in the yard, one near the barbecue pit. Gacy had even drawn them a map, a diagram of his graveyard.
And the remains confirmed his methods. The ligatures, the cloth.
Yes. Many victims were found with rags or underwear stuck in their throats. Some still had ropes or handcuffs on them. The physical evidence matched his confession and the rope trick signature.
They also confirmed the river disposal part of his story.
They found Robert Piest's jacket right where Gacy said he'd hidden it before dumping the body under the laundry room floor. His family ID'd it.
And Piest's body itself was eventually recovered.
Yes, finally identified on April 9th, 1979. That really closed the loop on the initial investigation that broke the case open.
And the very next day, the house came down.
April 10th, 1979. It had to go. It was just saturated with death, impossible to clean, a monument to horror. That quote from the demolition worker sums it up. If the devil's alive, he lived here.
So Gacy is indicted for 33 murders, a record at the time. He's confessed. The trial starts February 1980. It wasn't really about if he did it, was it?
No, not at all. The evidence was overwhelming. The entire trial hinged on his state of mind. The defense went all in on not guilty by reason of insanity.
Based on that Jack alter ego idea? Multiple personality disorder?
Exactly. They brought in psychiatrists to argue he was fractured, dissociated, that there was Gacy the contractor, Gacy the clown, Gacy the politician, and then Bad Jack, the killer, who hated homosexuals and saw his victims as scum.
And the argument was that the good Gacy couldn't control Bad Jack.
That was the defense theory.
Yeah.
That he wasn't legally responsible because he was suffering from this profound mental illness during the killings.
But the prosecution, led by William Kunkel, they weren't buying it. How did they counter that?
Kunkel was brilliant. He focused relentlessly on the evidence of planning, control, and consciousness of guilt. He pointed to everything Gacy did to avoid getting caught.
Like burying the bodies, digging the graves.
Exactly. Forcing employees to dig under a false pretense, using lime to mask the smell, the careful cleanup efforts. These aren't the actions of someone in a chaotic, dissociative fugue state.
And that switch to dumping bodies in the river.
That was huge for the prosecution. Kunkel argued it showed Gacy was adaptable, logical. When one method, burial, became impossible, he rationally switched to another, dumping, to continue concealing his crimes. That demonstrated clear thinking, planning, sanity under the legal definition.
Not the actions of someone out of control.
Precisely. Kunkel's closing was apparently very powerful. He asked the jury to give Gacy the same mercy Gacy showed his victims, reportedly threw victim photos onto a model of the crawl space entrance used in court. Very dramatic.
Did the jury deliberate for long?
Not really, less than 2 hours. On March 12, 1980, they found him guilty on all 33 counts of murder.
And the sentence?
Death. Handed down the very next day.
So Gacy goes to death row, spends 14 years appealing.
Yep, at Menard Correctional Center, all the while maintaining innocence or giving conflicting stories. And bizarrely, he takes up painting.
Painting clowns mostly.
A lot of Pogo the Clown paintings, yes. And they were actually sold, auctioned off, caused quite a stir. He remained this weird, dark public figure, even in prison.
Until the execution finally happened, May 10th, 1994.
At Stateville Correctional Center. He had his last meal, fried chicken, shrimp, fries, strawberries, prepared for lethal injection.
But it didn't go smoothly, did it? There was a problem.
No, it was quite controversial. There was a glitch with the lethal injection machine. One of the chemicals, potassium chloride, apparently crystallized or clogged the IV line going into his arm.
So they had to pause the execution.
For about 10 minutes, yeah. The execution team had to quickly replace the tubing behind a curtain while the witnesses waited. It definitely prolonged the process and raised questions about the procedure itself.
He was eventually pronounced dead just before 1 a.m. What about his last words? There's some confusion there.
Yeah, it's ambiguous. Some reports claim he said something defiant like, "Kiss my ass." But the prosecutor who was present insisted Gacy actually said nothing at all, so we don't know for sure.
Gacy's death wasn't the end of the story, though, especially for the victims. 8 bodies remained unidentified for decades.
That's right. Just known as victim #1, victim #5, etc. A terrible limbo for potential families.
Until Sheriff Tom Dart reopened the case in 2011.
A really important move. Dart decided to use modern DNA technology. They exhumed the unidentified remains to get better samples.
Why were those 8 so hard to identify back in the 70s?
A lot of it likely comes down to the social factors of the time. Many victims were young men, maybe estranged from families, maybe runaways, maybe exploring their sexuality in ways that weren't accepted then.
So their disappearances weren't always reported or investigated thoroughly. Police assumed they'd just left town or wrote them off.
Sadly, yes. Systemic homophobia played a role, societal neglect of marginalized youth. Families might have been ashamed or hesitant to report a missing son they suspected was gay. The system failed them twice, really.
So Dart's team asked families of missing young men from that era to provide DNA.
Exactly. To compare against the DNA profiles they developed from the remains.
And it worked. They've had successes.
Remarkable successes. In 2017, they identified victim #24 as James Jimmy Hawkinson. He was 16 when he vanished after coming to Chicago from Minnesota. His family finally got answers after almost 40 years.
And another one more recently.
Yes, October 2021. Victim #5 was identified as Francis Wayne Alexander. He was 21, disappeared in 1976. It took complex work with familial DNA databases, but they did it.
So now only 5 remain unidentified.
As of the latest reports, yes. 5 victims still waiting for their names back. But the effort continues.
It's crucial work. It shifts the focus back to the individuals, doesn't it? Making sure they're remembered as more than just numbers in Gacy's count.
Absolutely. Recent documentaries and reporting have really tried to center the victims and the investigators to tell their stories. It's about restoring dignity.
So, stepping back from this whole horrific saga, what does it all mean? What do we take away from this deep dive into John Wayne Gacy?
Well, it's just this ultimate terrifying example of camouflage, isn't it? How someone could wear this mask of respectability, the businessman, the politician, the friendly clown, while committing such atrocities in secret.
It shows how authority and community standing can be weaponized, used as a shield.
Definitely. And it's a brutal reminder of how vulnerable youth were targeted and how the system, back then at least, was so ill-equipped or unwilling to protect them or even believe them when they spoke out. The number of ignored warnings, the missed chances. It's chilling.
Yeah, the sheer volume of victims buried right there under his floorboards.
Yeah.
It stands as a monument to his evil, but also to those systemic failures.
It really does. The system failed those boys repeatedly.
And as a final thought,
Mhm.
think about those small personal items found with the victims in that crawl space, or maybe later identified. Things like a distinctive belt buckle, like the tiger's eye, one belonging to Robert Winch, or maybe a ring on an unidentified victim's finger.
Those tiny details.
Yeah. In the midst of all that horror and decay, these small, intimate things survived, things Gacy couldn't erase. And decades later, they become the key, the only link back to a person, a life, a family waiting for answers. It really makes you think about the weight those small details can carry, doesn't it? The whole lost history sometimes resting on something so small.